Hey, I'm Brian Foley. We've got Luis Baez here. He is our trial bureau chief at Galveston Criminal Defense Attorneys. And we just went on and picked the top 10 questions that we get for marijuana cases in Galveston, the top marijuana lawyer questions for Galveston County. So, question number one: what are the specific laws regarding marijuana possession in Galveston, and are they the same as throughout the state?
So there's two sets of laws that come into play when we're talking about marijuana cases in Galveston County. One would be federal law, which I think we're going to table for purposes of this video. And then the second would be the possession of marijuana law in Texas. It's not that complicated. It's essentially possession of marijuana is against the law of the state of Texas in Galveston County. But then the question would be, what kind of law or what kind of level of offense am I going to end up charged with if I got caught with marijuana? You can have your lower levels, you have higher versions of misdemeanors, and then there are also felony amounts. But big picture, state laws will depend on marijuana and then how much you have of it. And then the next questions go from there in terms of the possible outcomes.
So, is the law in Galveston related to marijuana the same as the law in the rest of the state for marijuana?
So the law is the same when it comes to comparing laws to the rest of the state. Now, the question is going to be, is an amount of marijuana that I get caught with in Galveston something that I can get arrested for, even though, let's say, I would not get arrested for it in Harris County or Dallas County, or maybe some other sort of larger county like that.
How much marijuana can somebody possess in Galveston County before it escalates from a misdemeanor to a felony charge?
In Galveston County, it's going to be a misdemeanor if it's 4 ounces or less, and it'll be a felony if it's anything more than 4 ounces.
What's the lowest level felony called?
It's called a state jail felony.
And how long could you go to jail for a state jail felony?
Well, if we're looking at the laws on how punishment is designed for state jail felony offenses, you could go to a state jail for up to 2 years. And the minimum for a state jail offense is 6 months in a state jail.
Wow. Are there any diversion programs or alternative sentencing options available for possession of marijuana cases in Galveston?
There are. There's something in Galveston called Pretrial Intervention Program, or PTIP for short. The way to think about it is it's something that you and your attorney would have to talk about and apply for in a very formal type of way. And if you're able to convince the prosecutor to let you apply for it and then get admitted to that program, that's something that we would call a diversion program, where you're not formally pleading guilty on any sort of paperwork that gets filed with the court. Instead, it's an agreement between yourself, the attorney, and the Galveston District Attorney's Office to work out your case without having to do like a formal probation.
Can a marijuana possession charge be dropped if the police don't follow proper search and seizure protocols in Galveston?
Yes, they can be dropped. And the way to think about that term is when cases are dropped, the way that happens is the prosecutors are the ones that dismiss the case. So we can say the prosecutor dropped the case, or the defense attorney got the prosecutors to drop the case. Now, sometimes the way attorneys have to get cases dropped, so to speak, is you have to have a formal hearing on, let's say, like a motion to suppress or some other kind of legal issue. And if that hearing goes in your favor based on the law and based on the facts of your particular case, then the case could get dropped that way too. There's an informal way to deal with it where your attorney tries to work out the issue with the prosecutors. And then the formal way is, hey, we have to set a motion for hearing and make arguments, cross-examine witnesses in front of the judge, and then see what the judge's ruling is.
What are the most common defenses that you use for a possession of marijuana case?
One of the most common defenses would be that we weren't in possession of the marijuana. There's a lot of case law that goes into what the word possession means. Big picture, I think most defense attorneys and prosecutors would agree that the starting point for how to think about possession is care, custody, and control. But once you start breaking down the case law for possession and how you tie it to a specific person, there's a bunch of different issues that can go into that definition as well. So possession is the big one. The second one is the substance that was found, the flower or the wax that was found, isn't THC. And based on that, it's not marijuana. Instead, it's hemp, which can be another long conversation, but that's something that I would consider to be a second defense from there.
How does this apply to medical marijuana users from out of state?
Yeah, I'm trying to think about that. Okay, so if somebody has a out of state medical marijuana license, you're going to want to figure out how to get a Texas version of that medical marijuana license. It is not enough to just have your out of state license and hand it to the law enforcement officer who you may be dealing with, and then have them say, okay, well, I'll leave you alone. The state of Texas has something called the Compassionate Use Program, which is its version of a medical marijuana license, but that's something that you would have to see a licensed medical professional to get and then be administered marijuana that way. And if you're traveling with it, there's probably a certain type of way that you would want to make sure it's labeled or stored, because if it's just sitting around in the cup holder container, if you say you have a license, that may not be enough to avoid an arrest depending on where you're at, especially in Galveston County.
What are the long-term consequences of a marijuana possession conviction in Galveston? Does this impact jobs or housing?
It potentially could, depending on what type of job you're looking for or applying for, or what type of housing you're looking or applying for. Long-term consequences of a possession of marijuana case could be a driver's license suspension, and it could pop up on any sort of background check that is done by employers or housing authorities or like private landlords as well. If you get convicted, it's something that could stay on your
Okay. That's possession of marijuana cases, the top 10 questions from our trial bureau chief, Luis Baez. We'll see you guys next time.